want that, but that's not what our sales show that consumers are buying.
But anyway, tonight's special guest, Who's Big Bill talking to, is Ralph Renzetti. Now, Ralph, Hey, welcome to YouTube Model Builders Live. Who's Big Bill talking to this evening? Today is January 9, 2019. I want to introduce our special guest tonight, Steve Atwell from Midwest Model Railroad and Hobby Shop that he owns. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Bill. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm glad that you can make it. Steve is a fellow New Yorker. He actually is a fellow New Yorker, because whenever we get together and talk, he just gripes about the city and the subway and everything. So he's an official New Yorker, and he actually says coffee and stuff like that, you know. But he's with us. He splits time between here and his home and doing Midwest Model hobbies. So Steve, what have you been up to lately? How is Midwest Models Hobby Shop coming along?
It's great. We had a really great 2018. And as a result of that, some new and interesting things are happening in 2019. We've already brought on more staff to help get packages out on time, making sure to keep our commitment to getting packages out within a day, and keep our prices incredibly low. So everyone wears a lot of hats, but we do everything we can to keep our costs to a bare minimum. I make sure your guys' costs is to a bare minimum.
I think that's Creative Rails. Ben, he asks, with an increase of available highly detailed locomotives, have you found a decrease in sales of super detailed locomotive parts?
No. People, HO scale details west, that it still flies off the shelf. We order that often and restock that often. People like scale trains and people like Intermountain that are producing some great detailed locomotives. They want you to believe that that's the biggest part of the market, but I can tell you that it is not the biggest part of the market. We all have this, we all want the super detailed, we all want this, we all want that, but that's not what our sales show that consumers are buying.
But anyway, tonight's special guest, Who's Big Bill talking to, is Ralph Renzetti. Now, Ralph, I got to tell you, every time I turn on YouTube now, I see you with Steve Brown, the regular guy, on his Saturday morning track talk thing. You and Ron Marsh over there. I turn on this thing, and in the after hours, sometimes I come on, and there you are, dispensing your infinite knowledge and wisdom on weathering and all modeling and railroad together. There's an explosion of Ralph Renzetti.
Just first trying to share it.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. But first and foremost, how you doing, Ralph? How is everything?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
First and foremost, let me ask you, how did the Mudfather icon come up? What is that?
When I first started coming into YouTube and sharing my talent or whatever I have, somebody every time I came in, who was it? Dwight would say, "Oh, here comes the Italian stallion," or whatever, that sort of thing. And then somebody said, "No, it's the Godfather." And they said, "No, wait a minute, the Mudfather, his weathering, the Mudfather." So I got it from YouTube Model Builders.
Well, good. I'm glad we gave you that moniker. I'm glad that we got that. We've been a big fan of yours, for quite a while, even before you appeared on the YouTube Model Builders. And me and you had a chance a year ago coming this weekend. Oh, excuse me, I got something in my eye. A year ago this weekend, me and you met up at Amherst.
Amherst, yeah.
And I thought you'd be like a really short guy, but you're not. You're kind of tall.
Almost 6 foot. I used to be 6 foot when I was younger.
Yeah.
I'm shrinking now. Some people say they don't pilot that high, but
that's the same thing they said. We're gonna have a good conversation, I can tell. But anyway, with that, let us get back. Tonight we have a special guest on our show tonight, who's Big Bill talking to, and I happen to get this from our good friend Wilma. In our last conversation when Wilma was on a show with us, he said, "You got to check out this guy Ben Mooney. You got to check out this guy Benny Mooney." You know, that's my best imitation of Wilma. It's not bad. You know, he's not bad. So I kind of looked him up. I looked on his thing, and I saw Creative Rails, and it was really good. So here is our good friend Ben Mooney from Canada, and the author and content maker of Creative Rails. How are you, Ben?
Good, Bill. Thanks. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. It was our pleasure.
Yeah.
Actually, we had somebody else who was more important than you, but he couldn't show up, so we went with you. You were Plan B. Well, actually, you were Plan C, but don't I didn't want it. Anyway. Nah, you were. It was great. Now it's our honor to have you on. Anybody who makes good content and is, kind of like, enthused in the hobby, like you, and your videos absolutely convey that. So, we just wanted to have you on. Indian Head Valley Railroad woman says, "We got to work on your not bad, Big Bill." Yes, you're right. You're right, Wilma. We do. So, in our pre-show discussion. We kind of found out that you model in HO.
Yes.
And what is the railroad? You want to be the prototypical, but is it a made up railroad, or is it a railroad that you're basing it on?
So it's based on a prototype, but I call it loose prototype. And an example right off the hop is the tracks. So I'm using code 83, but in reality, if I wanted to be super prototypical, I should be using even like a code 50. Because on those lines, they had such old stick rail on there. They were really limited to what they could run. Like the largest steam engines I could run were lightweight Pacifics. And that was literally because of the small rail and the light gauge bridges. But I'm using code 83. And the reason for that is because some of my old steam engines, I'm using a lot of old Mahanos, and I've got some old Varneys that I'm custom building boilers and putting them on. So the flanges on those old steam engines can barely handle the code 83 going through the switches and stuff. So that's just why I call it loose prototypical, because it is prototypical, but I'm bending a few of the rules.
That's all right. It's your railroad. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Big Bill coming to you live from Staten Island, New York. It's March 27, 2019, 9:04 p.m. We're 4 minutes late. This is due to the fact that we had to follow Sparky 107, and he ran a little over. So we didn't get the green light from Canada yet. But here we are now, talking to you live from North America. Anyway, hold on for a minute. I had muskrat sushi. Sushi? Is that what my wife said? It was muskrat sushi tonight. Sushi? I don't know what it is.
Roadkill.
Muskrat. I know it was muskrat, but it was very salty. Very salty. So I wanted to. I got to drink a lot of water because I don't know how she made it. I think she said it was roadkill. I don't know, but it was tremendously salty. Anyway, here we are with Who's Big Bill talking to on YouTube Model Builders. Before I introduce my guest, I want to do some homework with you guys. Tomorrow, this is the 27th. Can you believe it? We're at the end of March already. My goodness gracious, time flies when you're having fun. Anyway, tomorrow night, Thursday, is going to be Johnny's Train Talk Show. And you're all invited to come in. The door's always open to the general store and Johnny's Train Talk Show. Come in, sit around the potbelly stove, talk about trains. Whatever you want to do. You want to be part of this community, part of the video thing, look for the link. You can jump right in. If you got a project you're working on, by all the means, just tell them and bring it up. If you're having a problem, you need to correct it, electronics, whatever it is, Johnny's Train Talk Room, you can discuss it. And somebody out there has got to have an answer. So by all means, please do. And then on what was the other thing, John? Last Friday. Oh yeah, Friday. Uh, Friday after 3 p.m. Model Railroading Views is going to come out with the second installment of on the topic of youth in the hobby. That's going to be our second installment, and that's going to be on Friday. This Friday after 3 p.m. We'll cut it loose. What was the other one? Big Bill. He's Sparky. Listen to this. Sparky is actually yelling at me. It's a good thing you live in Canada, son. It's big bold. When you do it in capital letters, that means you're yelling. So yeah, technically what he's doing is, Big Bill, can you tell me what the new program is going to be? That's what he's doing. He's yelling at me. Why would you yell at me? I'm a nice guy. You can text me, email. I promise I won't tell anybody. Yeah, right. Anyway, on Monday, when is the 31st? Is Monday, right? Sunday, 31st is Monday, and that's after 3 p.m. That's when we're going to drop the big reveal. So we're going to drop the new everything on you guys on Sunday, March 31st. Nothing will go into effect until April 2nd. Okay? The big reveal this Sunday, March 31st. The video will be put out after 3 p.m. So be sure to check in. Tomorrow night, on Thursday night, is Johnny's Train Talk Show. On Friday, after 3 p.m., is the model railroading views, and it's the second series, second chapter in Youth in the Hobby. So got something to look forward to over the weekend, and check it out. Yeah, Sparky, you have to wait as well. So that's it. So tonight, who's Big Bill talking to? We've brought all the way from what's that state you live in there, Mark?
West by God, Virginia.
West Virginia. We've got him all the way from West Virginia. Is Mark Stewart. You guys know him as Stu's Structure. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. We were talking the other night, Mark and I and John, and we were going over his structures and the pictures. I think one of his pictures is up the beanery. Right now he's doing this beanery, and it seems to be all the talk in the hobby because every time it comes on, everybody's flocking to it to see what you're doing. But we were talking, and it turns out that we're going to get into this too, that Mark is a part, or was prior to some personal issues that took over his life, but he's part of the B&O Historical Society. And he has an awesome array of collectibles and collections of railroad stuff, railroad memorabilia. And if I'm not mistaken, you said you actually have a flat car. Is that correct?
I have a maintenance of way flat car. Yeah, several years ago, I found in Philippi, West Virginia, a speeder and a couple different back-to-back seat car and a flat car. And I'm also a member of a railroad museum in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So we got CSX to donate all this stuff to us, and we refurbished the other two. And the museum uses them every Saturday morning on rails down there now. But I confiscated the flat car out of those three pieces when we got them. Yeah.
So you actually have an MOW flat car.
Yeah, it's one of the little short, like 8-foot long ones that they use behind speeders to haul guys and stuff up and down the tracks, maintenance of way crews.
That's pretty interesting. Let's start at the beginning with Stu's Structures. Now, the other day we were talking when we did our tech tune-up, and it was pretty interesting. You actually don't have a layout at this present moment, right?
No, I do not. I when I came home several years ago back to this area and got married and settled back in West Virginia, I got involved with a group in Grafton, in West Virginia, and we were building a layout, and we worked on it a little over a year, and then there were some serious structural issues with the building, and we kind of had to vacate the building. And we've been looking for a home, and so far we haven't got a new home. So I just decided to go ahead and build all these buildings that were in Grafton. And then eventually, if we don't find a home there, I'll build a building to play with my toys because I want to be able to play with my toys. So
That's very good. Yeah. So now you went ahead and you built the structures. You started building the structures, correct?
Yeah, the beanery I just did finish. Last week's video is the final of that building. I need to work some on the platform and stuff, but the building is mounted on a platform and the building is pretty much finished. So this Friday, I've got another video for people that watch my channel. And in the following video, we're going to start building another building that was in Grafton, West Virginia at that point in time.
Now, when you do this building, now the beanery, could you explain to us the beanery? Is the beanery an actual bean factory, or what's
No. The beanery was actually built in the 1850s. It was the first hotel and station on the B&O Railroad west of the mountains when the railroad was being built. And it was used up till about 1900, and it was known as the hotel and station then. And then they built a new station and hotel in town, which is a huge multi-story structure as well. And this became known as the beanery because they started housing crews and stuff in this building, and it had a kitchen that fed crews that had to overnight there and stuff, and it became the beanery. So.
Oh, okay. And how long did it take you to come up with this? I mean, obviously you took it from photographs, but from blueprint to actual cutting the wood, and how long?
It took me several months. I actually started on this building a year ago, and then I ended up in the hospital for for a while, and bad health for a while, and had a lot of personal issues that tied me up for several months. So last November, I think I got back into the build, and I've been building it until, well, last week I just put the last episode up. It's a pretty involved structure. We'll show pictures in a little bit, but it's a big building, and
I know.
It took a long time to build. And for those people that don't know, this it didn't come from a kit. I bought windows that were pre-made, but all the walls, the roofs were just sheets of plastic, and I cut everything and glued it all together and made the walls and stuff. This was not a kit. So
right. Deuce the Two, he asked, tell them about the club, Mark.
Oh, you mean the Grafton Modeling Club?
Yeah.
It was pretty good. Grafton over the years had model railroads in town. And when I first joined the club, they were just going to build this freelance railroad. And the more I thought about it, Grafton is just an iconic place on the B&O Railroad. And I thought, well, we could probably get local funding from the county commissioners and the city and everybody to help build this if we made it more of a tourist attraction and had it open to the public. So they all agreed, and we decided to build Grafton exactly the way it was in the 40s and 50s. And it's huge. The downtown yard, which it's just a yard for facilitating locomotives and passenger traffic. And in HO scale, it's about 26 feet wide. So there's a lot of buildings involved, and to reproduce this all exactly as it was in that period of time, it's just something I've always wanted to do, and researched it for years and years and years, and collected all this material to be able to do that. And so it was just a goal we had until we were thrown out of our house. So anyway.
Sparky 107 asks, what gives you the drive? What motivates you to do such finely detailed scratch building?
Well, I think every man out there has toys, and there's several things I enjoyed doing in life, but model railroading is one of them. And Grafton just has a particular place in my heart and B&O history. I worked at the B&O archives for about 3.5 years on weekends, and did research and stuff while I was there. And I've collected pictures for years and years, and blueprints, anything I could get my hands on. And I've always wanted to do a personal layout on the area. But when the modeling group decided they wanted to do it, it just opened the door for me to build all these buildings. And then, when we lost our home, I just decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and build him. And if we don't ever get a home, eventually I'll just build a building big enough to do it on my own and go ahead and proceed with it anyway. So, I can build the buildings and store them. And that's one big chunk of the main work for the layout done when I do get a home to lay tracks and run my trains. So,
Okay. So how many buildings have you scratch built so far?
Well, I started in this series and I opened up my channel with the tower, which I had started years ago, and came back and revisited building D Tower. There's actually 2 towers in Grafton. And then I had started the coaling tower too. Years ago, I bought the Walters concrete coaling tower. And after opening up and starting playing with it, Grafton had a 600-ton coaling tower. There's very few coaling towers that big anywhere in the United States. And when I took that one out of the box, it's somewhere between a 300 and a 400-ton coaling tower. I just decided, well, I really can't use much of this to do what I want to do. So I bought sheets of plastic and started scratch building that. And those 3 buildings are really the only ones I've started on till right now. I'm starting the freight station for my next series of videos. But there's a foundry that's over 100-foot long in HO scale. That's a stacked stone structure. There's a power plant building, a bunch of maintenance of way equipment, rip tracks type structures that have to be done. There's some industries in the area. I'm not sure how far we're going to go into the industries and doing all that, but I'd like to have the whole downtown area built exactly as it was. I'd like for it to be somewhat of a museum quality piece when I'm done with it.
Nice, very nice. Deuce the 2. He says, Mark, you do very good work and very good detailing.
Well, thank you. He was somebody from the Grafton area that was kind of a key player in the group that we're at, and he's been a good friend. I appreciate him saying that.
Okay, Andy Crawford asked, what he wants to know, what's your thoughts on selective compression when recreating historically accurate structures? Do you have a particular percentage that seems to work well, or is it just about flavor?
Well, it's a mix of flavor and everything, really. You can't model in any scale and do everything exactly to scale, or you would need 5 acres to build a town in. So
True, very true.
You can't do everything to perfect scale. So what I want to do with this layout is the Grafton main engine facility. I would like to do close to scale. I am going to condense it some, but a lot of these buildings are one after another in succession in line. So compressing it down to 20 foot or so is about as max as I can go and make it real. And then from there, all the lines that feed that come down into the branch lines that I want to model and all that stuff, that'll be compressed a whole lot more. I want to have enough running because, Grafton, I don't know how many, there was during the time period that I modeled, because I modeled the steam era. And, during that period of time, there was 28 passenger trains that went through Grafton every day. And they swapped out cars between all these. And that's just the passenger traffic. There was, just tons of freight and everything else in here. So, to be able to run long trains and do everything I do, even the branch lines and everything are going to have a lot of footage and trackage on them to make them somewhat realistic. But I can't model 30, 40 miles in HO. So obviously I have to compress that down quite a bit. So I'm probably going to do localities and some key structures in each of those smaller localities that are accurate. And then, kind of phase those out with some scenery and stuff in between them, because most of this area is woods. There's a lot of timber, a lot of coal mining and small towns, but a lot of trees in between those small towns. So it's all going to come down to how big of a building I can build when it comes down to actually putting the layout together.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, Sparky wants to know, when it came to the beanery, did you know how many pictures, photos you had for reference? Is there other reference materials you have, and have you used for it, and how you used for it?
The beanery, it was going to be one of the harder structures because it was one of the oldest structures there, and I did not have blueprints for this building. The closest thing I had to actually gave me any dimensions to work from was I found some Sanborn maps at West Virginia University, and I copied them off. And I blew that up to scale, and it gave me a footprint for the building that gave actual dimensions of the footprint of that building. So once I had that, what I did was I took some of these pictures on my computer and blew them up and counted bricks and knew, all right, well, for every 3 bricks, that's 2 feet wide. And for, the bricks are with the mortar lines are about 4 inches tall. So how many bricks and how tall is this actually? On the Sanborn maps, some of them actually tell you this was a 2-story building with 12 foot per story. So some of that information I had, some I did not. But I mean, I had enough pictures for this building that I could do it justice. There were some areas with the overhead walkway and stuff. I have no pictures between the 2-3-story hotel buildings to work from. So I had to talk to people in the area and get their input because they remember it. It was around when I was young, but I don't remember the building that well other than having just, seen it in passing. So I relied on them a lot for, well, there was no door here, there was no window here, blah, 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 that type of thing in areas that I had no references to.
Right.
And some
So
of
a lot of, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
No, I was going to say, so a lot of it was research.
Yeah. A lot of it. Yeah. If you're scratch building, that's key. I mean, you can build a building from one photograph, but you're going to see 2 sides. So you're going to have to maybe fudge a little on the back sides. You can guess at what was there. But this one, I mean, I have 20 or 30 photographs from these. Some of them are up close. Some of them are way in a distance, but they were taken with real cameras that weren't digital. And when I scanned them at a really high DPI so I could blow this thing up from a half mile away and get fairly good detail in the pictures that I have.
Well, I think just before I comment and ask this question, Ron's Trains and Things, good old friend Ron Marsh, says, I really enjoy the Beanery series, beautiful scratch building.
No, thank you, Ron.
For those that are tuned in late, this is Mark Stewart, and his channel is called Stu's Structure, where you can see and watch him build the Beanery and a few other structures for the railroad, a model railroad that he hopes him and his club were able to put together in a couple of, whenever they can get a building. To update you, they were in a building and they were going to start this as a museum piece, and they couldn't get the building because they had structural damage to it. And basically, it was condemned. So, Mark, you're going to jump in, John? John is going to jump in, folks. Get ready. Hold on to your hats.
I can't help this. Ralph was asking why is it Stu Structures, and Sparky and them were answering. But Andy came back and said, I got to get me a pen name. Dave Piper goes, Crawdaddy.
There you go.
All right, I'm gone.
Yeah, there's been several times in my life. I think I have some guys that I was in the service with in the Navy with watching this tonight too. And during that period of time, I was known as Stu. Stewart is my last name, and they shortened it, and Stewie was kind of my nickname. But there's been other periods of my life where I was called Stu. And my actual college degree is in visual communications or advertising, so graphics, and so when I was trying to think up a name, Stu Structures just had a good ring to it, so that's why I chose that for the channel. So,
oh, hey, I believe you.
Well, it works. It's a sellable name. It's okay.
Yeah, that gets you. Yeah, definitely, absolutely. But anyway, I think the best thing out of this whole thing is the investigation of it. I know for myself, the South Brooklyn Railroad here that I have is based on an actual urban railroad that was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and my era is the 70s when the city of New York was at its worst, urban decay everywhere. So it's when Gerald Ford, the president at the time, told New York City to drop dead and wasn't funding any money to us. So this has been, but it's interesting to go back and look in, the Brooklyn Historical Society. When I went there to look, they were like, when I asked them about, the South Brooklyn Railroad and the Bush Terminal, they had like tons and tons and tons of stuff and microfilm and, stuff like that. And the best part is that you get to talk to people like you said, in your instance, you get to go to the town and you say, hey, I'd like to, and you have this involved conversation. And not only are you getting, the thing about the beanery and the structure itself, but you're also getting that personal hometown flavor of what it was these guys lived, and the railroad passed through there, in its heyday. So you're getting that authentic flavor to it,
Well, I think research is really a key part of the hobby that a lot of people just, not everybody has that interest. I mean, I hated history growing up, but when I started getting into all this, now I'm a historian. It's like one of the things I mentioned in one of my videos about the 3-story tower building in this beanery. I'm currently writing somewhat of a history of the Civil War for the area that I'm in. It just goes day by day what happened in this area. And I was reading a book that talked about when the Southern Army left Grafton and moved down to Philippi, West Virginia, because the Union Army was coming in there. The people camped all around in the railroad yard here. And General McClellan and all his colonels actually met in the 3rd story of this tower in this building to plan out the first land battle of the Civil War. And that's just a new finding. I just recently found that out, but I thought, that's really cool. And here I am building this building,
Right. And you, like you said earlier, and I pointed out, you were involved in the Historical Society.
Yeah.
And you were telling us about an incident where you looked up an engineer. And can you tell us a story about how he was brought to court in regards to what he didn't have? I think that's an interesting story.
I worked at the B&O Historical Society's archives for 3.5 years, one weekend a month. And there's a gentleman back home that's a retired conductor who was working on the B&O clear back in the steam days. And I didn't know his brother, but his brother was a lot older and ran some of the first steam locomotives into West Virginia in the late 1800s. And so I was looking for their personnel records because we had a few there at the archives, and I didn't find his, but I found his older brothers. And, it gives every piece of everything about him and his life you could ever think of in that file. But one time he was brought up on charges and he had to go before a judge and several people over this charge. And basically what it was is he didn't have his pocket watch inspected by a certain date when it should have been inspected. And it was a criminal charge. He had to go to court over that. So
really, that is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think that's pretty amazing. Now,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I had I knew they were strict. My dad was a watchmaker and I knew they were supposed to get, timepieces inspected every so often and all that kind of thing. But I didn't know it was that strict until I read this in this file. It was like, wow, really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm a rebel. I mean, those of you out here that don't know me, I'm not total anti-establishment, but I am a rebel, and I probably would not have fared well in that situation.
I don't think a lot of us would, I don't think a lot of us would. What do you have any photographs that you'd like to share with us? I'd love to.
I do have. I have a bunch here queued up, and we're just going to start with the beanery. That's the building that most people are familiar with what I've been working on here lately. Johnny, can you pop that up, or do I have to share it here? Okay, you got it up. I've got it on my screen. I don't know. Yeah, right there. Oh, okay. So I'm up on your screen. Is what I was curious. Oh, okay. Okay. I got you. I got you. Okay. So that was the first. We'll go back up to the first building. This is as the building was. And this building changed a lot over time. This is around the time of the Civil War here. And, we go to this next shot. This was the earliest picture of it. It's early 1850s. And you can see that building on the end is just a tiny one-story shed at that point in time. So I had to pick and choose what I wanted to include in the building. And this is pretty much the basic building as it was in our time period. And, it's just all a bunch of glued together plastic. There's some wood in it, some little details and things I added into the building. And there's this walkway between these two 3-story hotel buildings actually across the tracks on both sides of this Y of the railroad and went up to town. And the people could walk from town across the railroad tracks through these two buildings. And then they crossed over the next set of railroad tracks and actually walked on around the back of the top of the roof of the roundhouse. And then it went down steps and then crossed a pedestrian bridge that was right alongside tracks on a railroad bridge to the other side of town. And that's the way people, civilians, crossed from one side of town to the other for the longest time.
Wow.
And then we'll just go on around the building here. On the back side, this stair that entered the building back there was removed by our time period, but I went ahead and added it on there because it added a lot of interest. And then just to come on around the building.
Now that building itself, that beanery building, was that towards, because I see you have the American flag on it.
Yeah, in several pictures I have that flagpole is there, but I have never in any picture ever saw the flag actually on that pole. There is a hatch for access to the roof right there beside of it, but I'm a veteran and I have a place in my heart for the American flag. So I decided I was going to fly the American flag on this building and it was going to stay there.
No,
So,
the only reason I'm asking is because I'm just for the time period that the Confederate flag wasn't flown for the Civil War. This is after the Civil War.
Yes, this would have been 1940s, 1950s is the time
Okay.
I want to model. So it's still steam. Not at the end of that time period, you were starting to get diesels into this area, but still steam all over the system. Kind of all was killed off by diesels, and a lot of it was moved here and moved here and moved here. And this was one of the last remnants, really, of steam was in this area here. So yeah, this would have been 1940s, 1950s by the time this building was to this point. And then one of the next building that I started years ago is that 600 ton coaling tower we were talking about. And it can feed coal to 4 tracks. It has 1 track that has the loading chutes for it, and also the sanding was also included in this tower, and you could get sand actually out of the coaling tower in your locomotive while you were filling up with coal as well. And this is where I am to that point on that structure, and this is all scratch built. I saved out of that Walther's kit. I did save all the walkways because this has walkways from this 3rd story all the way down the side of it to the ground level, and I kept all that, and I can use all that out of the kit that I bought in some of these windows. But basically the whole structure is just made out of I like buying things inexpensive, so where I go get a lot of my styrene is just going to Walmart or wherever and buying no parking signs or yard sale signs or whatever. So I use that to cut the plastic to make a lot of these buildings. So, I try to do things as inexpensively as I can wherever I can. So,
Sure.
and then there's just the other side of that structure. It's still got a ways to go, but it's got at least the basic body of it together. And then we go on to the tower. This is D Tower from down in Graft, and you can see the new hotel and station clear down there at the far end in the background. But the tower here, and here's just a different shot that I used in a lot of my videos of the tower. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was showing. Yeah. But anyway, here's the build as I have it to this point. I kind of got away from this because I want to do the interior, and I've only found a couple of good interior shots, and they're later on in history. It doesn't have all the levers and everything in the pictures for the way I want to do the build the interior. So I'm kind of got it on hold until I can get some more information. But it did have this circular staircase that came from the first floor up to the second floor, and I did scratch build the circular staircase, which took a little while.
Yeah, that must have been a bear.
Well, it's, you know, I mean, a lot of this round tubing and stuff, it doesn't really want to take to that shape very well. So it was,
You would think, right?
it was a tedious process.
And after 3 cups of coffee, you can't, like, you know, it's like,
Oh no, you don't drink coffee and sit down and do this.
no.
You jitter and you never be able to do it. Or at least I would anyway.
Right.
But and then there's just some other structures. This is the foundry. When the B&O first came here, all the steel for all the bridges and everything was made in this foundry for all of West Virginia. This was the main foundry on the west end of the B&O River or railroad. It was around 1850s as well. Stacked stone structure over 100 feet long. So it'll be probably after the freight station I'm getting ready to build. It'll be next. This is just a shot of it from across the tracks. And this is what I'm starting on now is the freight station. This has changed a lot over time. Another 1-story brick structure and then metal, you know, siding on the second story, but it has all this brick dental work and stuff in it, and the arches over the doors and a louvered panel in this end. You know, in the back, when I want to model, all these platforms had covers on them as well. So I've got to build all those on it too. So that's the one we're getting started in with the next videos that I'm getting ready to put up. And then this will be one of my last builds for grafting because it's complicated. There's a lot of marble, a lot of brick, a lot of keystones, ornamental cast, and some pieces like over the station on the left-hand side over the doorways. You can't see it very well in this, but there's actually chiseled out carvings of the B&O symbols and stuff over the doorways. It's just, it's going to take me a long time to build this building. So I'm putting it off to one of my later buildings, but it's just, if you're in Grafton, this says Grafton more than any other building. So
now you said on that hotel, that last photograph, that B&O was carved into the stone.
Yes, even on this side, the structure, see that 2-story building? Above it is a piece that's about 12 feet wide, and it has a circle in the middle of it with B&O carved in it. And then it has all kinds of leafed scrolling and stuff underneath of it and across the sides and surrounding the circle. I had thought about adding that in here, and I didn't do it.
How much financial input did B&O have in the town of Grafton?
Oh, it was huge. That was huge. Grafton is Grafton because the B&O Railroad was there. If the railroad had never came there, Grafton would be a tiny little shanty town probably.
Now,
Grafton was really a key place on the B&O because it's the last stop after you cross the mountains. So all the heavy motive power and big trains that were pushed and shoved and pulled and yanked over the mountains came here, and then everything was swapped out for lighter power going south, north, and west from here. So everything kind of converged to here to be able to cross the mountains to go to Cumberland.
I have a question here. MHBPODNK, because I don't know how to pronounce that. He wants to know, where did you find all these pictures?
A large percentage of them I did get from the B&O Historical Society. I mean, this picture, you can see it says West Virginia Regional History Collection at the bottom, and that's a WVU, West Virginia University photograph. They have a large collection. You can go online and view their collection. They don't have it well organized. I was down for the count with cancer for about 6 months out of 1 year while I had my major treatment. So I went through 26,000 and some photographs online to find everything I could find on Grafton. But I've been with the Taylor County Historical Society, went through all their files. I've been through private collections, got stuff from their files, old newspapers at WVU, going through just looking for articles and stuff to find information. Like I said earlier, working 3.5 years at the B&O Historical Society, 1 month out of the year, going through all their stuff. I mean, it's out there. It's B&O is more prominent than some railroads. You can find it, but some of it you really have to look for.
I know there's a large contingent of actually B&O Railroad on Staten Island.
Yeah, it was B&O had a hard time. They didn't want to lose out on the New York end of traffic because they wanted to be able to provide East Coast to West Coast, and New York at that time was the biggest city on the East Coast. And so their only way to really get into the main part of New York City was to use barges and float their cars across the river because they couldn't get rights to build a bridge. So they went about it in a very unique way of getting their trains into New York City, and they did accomplish that. And you could ride a train which would have brought you through Grafton, clear to Cincinnati, and from there caught a West Coast train, and within 2 to 3 days you could go from New York to California.
Yeah. Andy Crawford wants to know: are you going to do the carve of the B&O in the building of the hotel?
Yeah.
And are you going to use embossed lettering or styrene layers or carve it with a micro chisel?
I'm probably going to use clay and do it out of clay and then bake it and mold from that for both sides of the building. I blew it up to scale and I've actually looked at how, and it's going to take some work. It's not going to be a quick one evening project to do because it's an involved engraving. It's not easy. But I like challenges, so.
Sure. Sparky 107 says, he says, what I find amazing is that Mark knows the history for all of it too, and he has retained it.
Well, as you get older, you do start losing things and you run out of brain space. And when you throw something in, something does go out the other side and you lose it. But this is just one of my primary interests. I do a lot of things in life, and there's some things that I do that I go, what was that all about? I don't remember, So, I don't have that capability with everything, but right now I'm in the process of doing all this. So it's at the foremost part of my mind, I guess. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the combination, of as a commentary, I think all of it works in conjunction for what you want to do. The research of it, the practicality of getting the information on hand, looking at the information, studying the photographs, and then committing it from paper to scale building. And then taking your time on the building process of it.
Yeah. That's what I try to impress on everybody. I'm going to close out these photos and we can just, oops, how do I stop sharing? There we go. Okay.
You go on forever and ever.
Yeah, well, it ended that. So hopefully that'll clear up. Everybody is really intimidated about scratch building stuff like this, but the biggest part of it's in research and figuring out how to do it in a time involved. None of it's really that hard. It really isn't. It's just taking the time to do it and doing little stuff and building up to big stuff to where you can hone your skills a little bit. It's not that hard. It really is not.
I agree with you. I think that the thing that holds most people or most modelers back, whether they be female or male, is the confidence thing. And it's the ability to say, well, I can't fry an egg. So what makes you think, well, again, nothing ventured, nothing gained, if you're not gonna do the hard stuff, or at least try it, as they say, what did they say? Thomas Edison, he had 1,000 failures before he had them.
Oh yeah.
So and what is it? It's your time and you're having fun doing it. I know for myself that, and I'm sure the guys out there can agree, and I'm sure that you can. There's sometimes you're working on a project like you just said with the B&O carving, on it. You were like, well, I'm going to do it in clay because you looked at the situation, And I know for myself that I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, wait a minute, I can do this way. And
Yeah.
you come into the train room or you go to the workbench and you start, playing with it. Next thing you
Yeah.
know, the sun's coming up and
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. It's like all
you know,
those little tiny wood scrolling pieces under that
yeah,
tower roof. I mean, I looked at those and do I really want to carve, there's 12 on a side, 4 sides. So how many, do I really want to carve that many of those little things? And I said,
right.
there's no way, so I made one out of clay and baked it and made a mold and then used resins and cast them. I could cast 2 or 3 a day. I didn't make all those molds. I just cast 2 or 3 every single day. And
Exactly. I go through the process of like, when people come into the layout room and they see the layout and they're always like amazed. I always have mistakes here.
oh yeah.
I have glaring mistakes, and I wonder, but people's perception of things is even if they're not even the model railroaders that have come here and have looked, and they know what they're looking at, they I think the perception is you see all of this and you get like wowed.
Yeah.
Like we were talking the other night, how you said in one of the layouts, you guys would put, like Sasquatch and
Yeah.
see if anybody noticed it. And
Yeah.
when you
Oh, yeah.
watched them, they noticed it. It was like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, the little face lights up.
Right. You see their face light up. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
think what happens is it overwhelms the senses.
Yeah.
Like when you see it all, you're trying to take it all in,
Yeah.
and it looks wonderful. And then when you start pointing out the mistake, like I
Yeah.
have the Brooklyn Lollipop Company here, and I have a set of fire escapes on it. And one set of fire escapes was done backwards
Right.
because I was having a conversation with my neighbor. And I was doing this fire escapes and I was talking to him and I wasn't paying attention. And after it was all said and done, I looked at the fire escape and I was like, wait a minute, that fire escape's on backwards, but the glue had dry. So anybody who comes, they all look and I say, what do you notice about the Brooklyn Lollipop Company? And they're like, well, I see all the signage and it's really, did you make that? How did you do that?
Yeah.
I said, you notice anything that's wrong with it? And they go, no, it looks pretty. I said, look at the fire escape. And then they look at the fire escape and they go, oh, look at that. It's on backwards. So, which one, John? Nancy Jones. Is she up a little bit? Where's Nancy? Hello, Nancy. Welcome. Nancy Jones, Spirit of Colorado. Oh, man. Tired today.
Nancy.
Hey, Nancy Jones, Spirit of Colorado Railroad. There you go. I'm still intimidated on scratch building, but one of these days I will take the challenge on. LOL.
The best thing to do if you are intimidated, and when I do my builds, I've stressed this many times in my building, my series is, just start with something simple. Do an outbuilding or, a small 2-room house or a barn or, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Just start with an outhouse, and work your way up. You don't have to start. I mean, the beanery is the biggest structure I've ever built. I've never built anything that big before. And, I wasn't really intimidated by it. I was more intimidated by the amount of time it was going to take me to build that building than the actual process of doing it. Because
right.
It's not hard. It's just jumping out there and doing it. And once you do 1 or 2 little things, it's like, wow, I should have been doing this all the time.
Right, exactly. Deuce the 2, he put a site. You guys can go during in the Q&A. He put a link to get a lot of photos from. It's www.steve haluda.com at Grafton. So apparently there's a ton of photographs there that you guys can look at.
Yeah, he has a lot of old stuff clear back to the Civil War on there too. I mean, old stuff. It's really nice. It's a nice site. He has a lot of good information there.
Indian Head Valley Railroad, Wilmer. Hey, Wilmer. I love history. It's amazing what used to be around but isn't around anymore. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, while I was working on the series and doing the series for the tower, they tore the tower down. I
Ah,
mean, I've got shots of it being torn down during the time that I was building the model of the tower. It was a sad day.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
Model man Mike, I'm trying to stay low. Lurking, yes. Hello, Mike. Trying to see if we got anything.
And for those of you out there that don't know, we talk about fine scale and doing things museum quality and all that. We call people that do everything, that have every single rivet in place on anything, a rivet counter. And, I'm somewhere between a rivet counter and a novice. But, what I tell everybody is that really, I'm amazed by some of the stuff I see. If I see a picture in a railroad magazine or whatever of something, and I have to look at it 5 minutes before I can spot something that says, wow, that's not real. I mean, there are people out there that do that quality of work. I'm not one of those. I do okay work, but I mean, it's just some people can just do stuff that's like, wow, amazing.
Yeah, Model Man Mike says of you, Mark. He says, very well constructed buildings here. A very good model you're watching here. I'm so impressed by his ability.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I enjoyed your stuff for a long time. I think I've probably watched everything you put out there. You had a lot of good
Joe G
material.
says, I started my scratch building with gluing together cardboard stand and building.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Cardboard is, I take all the cereal boxes.
Yeah.
My wife is like, what are you doing with them? I said, I don't know. And you sit and you cut them and you play with them and that's how you start, figuring things out and stuff.
Couple of people over the last week asked me how I got started in this. And when I was a kid, probably 7 or 8 years old, we did HO scale cars as well as trains. And we built a layout in a basement to do those on. And there was an old piece of paneling laying out from the house that we had been in the weather for several years, and all the plies had came apart. And I took those plies and a razor blade and cut little boards and made, a weathered structure out of it. That was, my first scratch builds probably.
And you're right. Do you find yourself, when you're out and about, taking pictures of old structures and detailing, kind of like looking at
Sometimes.
details on building?
I don't do it as much as I used to, because I did it for so many years and I have so much material to work from. The one thing that still intrigues me and I still do take pictures of is a lot of the old buildings that had the painted signs on the side of them, that, a 3-story building and the whole thing was painted as an advertisement. And I still take shots of a lot of that stuff because that's the time period I would model. And to do that by hand is, oh my God, I would love to have decals made. So I do take pictures of more of that kind of stuff than buildings now.
Yeah. Jennifer White, you should have a good place to build your scratch buildings. Hello, Jennifer. How are you tonight? Let's see. Sparky says, Mark, if you're just doing okay work, then I will never measure up, but someday we'll try to. You do have me dreaming of the possibilities for realism to be an era, for the era being modeled. Indian Head Valley Railroad, Wilma says, Mark, you're too hard on yourself. You are your hardest critic.
Yeah, I agree with that. It really isn't hard, though. It's just time consuming. If you're trying to throw something together, you're not going to have something as nice as if you took twice as long and took your time and just did it, better.
Well, I agree with you. Most of the kits on my layout are out of the box Walters.
Most people.
But the thing with that is, like, when I started doing more research about the Bush Terminal Railroad in South Brooklyn Railroad, I went down and I went down and took pictures of one of the factories, and the factory happened to be right next door to the federal penitentiary.
Yeah.
Right there. They converted one of the Bush terminals into a federal prison. So it's surrounded, the building, they butt up against each other, and the federal penitentiary is barbed wired out, so
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
over here snapping pictures with my, my phone, and this, the car comes around and wants to know what I'm doing, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to explain
Planning
to
a
them.
breakout, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to plan, I'm trying to do this building. I want to get the height, and
Yeah.
I want to get the color, and I want to paint it, and
Yeah.
I want to know why the guy's like, okay, just keep going, get in your car and get out of here. So,
Yeah.
but that's always interesting, and I think that's half of it. Let's see. Let's see. Modeler Man Mike wants to know, Stu, I will be spending some time watching your channel. Thank you for the compliments on my videos. Also, most importantly, thank you so much for sharing your tips in the video on YouTube. Yes,
Yeah.
that's very true.
I think that's what all this is about, is the sharing of information. I mean, I watch tons of videos on, even young people that just have a loop of train on a 4x4 piece in their basement with nothing, because you can learn from everybody. And the more people, like I said, I'm not the greatest modeler in the world, but if everybody shares this information, everybody can learn and better their craft and their ability to do things. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Andy Crawford says, yes, Mike, I think he's one of the very best producing YouTube content, sharing it with us.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I enjoy it. I mean, I'm going to build them. I might as well take a couple extra hours and put the information out there,
Yeah, no, that's the best part. That's the best part of sharing it. I know that, some people, like I share this all the time. I got an email once. I built the building, and on that I put a piece of fine sandpaper. I splayed it black, and I put some glue on it heavy to make it look like the tar lines. Someone called me up and emailed me actually and said, "Hey, do you think it would be all right if I use that technique?" I said, "Go right ahead," because I stole it from somebody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no exclusive.
No, anything I do, that's why I put it out there. If it helps somebody and they can use it, jump on anything I do. It doesn't bother me one bit. And yeah, a lot of what I do, I got from watching other people do what I'm doing. So,
Sure, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it goes a long way. I think that what you do, Mark, I mean, I've been watching your videos, and they're very in depth, and they're not technically, hard. No, exactly. I mean, when I went to high school, I didn't go to my algebra class because right after algebra was lunch, and lunch was only 30 minutes, but my algebra class was 45
Okay.
and then 30. So I figured if I didn't go to algebra, I could get, more of a lunch.
Nice lunch. Yeah.
And listen, today's the 27th of March, 2019, and I haven't used algebra once all day. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
I very rarely find myself doing anything like that. And I'd have to break open a book to do some of that because I don't remember half of it if I wanted to use it.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Let's see. So Andy Crawford says, for sure, I gain so much value from others who share, so I feel compelled to give a little back, even if what one does isn't the greatest, it can help someone. We are all better when people share.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. And what do we got? And it's wonderful. Model Man Mike says, it's wonderful. This has actually come to the point where we are actually able to spend all day watching this. 5 years ago, you could only view a few videos thanks to Bill and his crew. Well, thank you, Model Man Mike. Good day to all modelers in the YouTube model builders land. Yes. There you go.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's actually helping to attract younger kids to the hobby too, which is another good thing because they're on the internet all the time. And if they have the interest, it's here.
Yeah. Well, a good friend of ours, Miles Hale, says that if the kids ain't got this in their hand, they ain't going to get involved in model railroading. But it turns out that it is. And actually, that's a good leadway into our model railroading views discussion.
There you go.
Be premiering on Friday after 3 p.m. Youth in the hobby. What do we got? We got something going on here, I think. Okay, good day to all. Okay, Ralph and Sparky, are they having a lover's quarrel? Okay, Martin at 11107. I use algebra every day. Food plus me equals happiness. Very good, Martin. You're absolutely right, brother.
Does it
Model
equal
Man
two
Mike, I have to
happinesses or
run
just
too,
one?
guys. I will catch the rest of this in a few hours. Sorry, I have to run. No problem, Model Man Mike. Mike, thank you so much for joining in. It was nice to hear from you and nice to see you, and always good to interact with you once again. If you guys haven't, Model Man Mike still has a channel out there, so check him out. Yeah. Andy Crawford says, yes, Mike, your original goal of driving more of this content has come to fruition from many angles, but it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Model Man Mike was one of the first. He's the gentleman that started this YouTube Model Builders 5 years ago, and it has since taken off. We have a lot of people out there now who are doing a lot of things, live streaming, Sparky 107, the Tuesday night chat group, the Four Amigos, Creative Rails, Wilma Indian Head. They're doing live shows. It's really exploded out there with a lot of different things, and a lot of how-tos and a lot of discussions. And it's
not
very
all just about information either. It's about building friendships with people in the hobby. I mean, I have a ton of friends now that I've met online that I never knew before, and it's opened a new world of people. I enjoy people, so.
Yeah, no, you're actually absolutely right. I mean, how many, it's always nice when you go to a large show, especially up in Springfield, Massachusetts, annually in January to the Amherst convention. Amherst, and you get to see all these people you see on. You get everybody to see from this point up until I'll never forget the first time Barry Roger, who was part of this. We were on YouTube for doing this together, this channel, and he lives in New Jersey, and obviously I live in Staten Island, which is you could throw a rock at it, from the porch, and so we decided to meet in the train, one of the train meets there, train shows, and I remember going in and he's on the cell phone. And he says, "Well, I'm over here by the Lionel guy," and I walked over and I walked up behind him and I said, "Hey, Barry," and he turned around and he looked up at me and he went, "Man, you're tall." What was going to be my reply? Oh yeah, you're short.
Yeah, right.
So
no,
yeah, Indian Head Valley Railroad. Wilmer says, "Mark, you're absolutely right about the new friends. This community is awesome."
Oh yeah.
John
everybody's there for everybody. I mean, it's really incredible.
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible, and I think, Stu, that your channel is, if you guys haven't subscribed to John, shame on you. Get out there and subscribe to Stu, and check out his videos. They're very informative, very entertaining, and very. I have to say, Mark, when I first tuned into your channel, I thought you were a Mennonite.
Well.
You had the chin beard going.
Yeah, I just this week I'm really lazy about shaving, and I need to more because I skipped the gray phase. It's white, so
yeah,
it definitely ages me in one day if I don't keep it shaved. But anyway,
yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
But no, I did go to Mennonite church, but
well, I first saw you. I mean, I saw you. And I said, this guy's a Mennonite, I guess.
Yeah, I tell them at the church I'm not a very good Mennonite. I was raised Methodist. I don't want to get into religion and politics or anything.
No, I understand. No, I'm just saying.
Good people, but yeah, I do look like that when I have my white beard.
I see the transformation of myself, getting a little off topic here. I see the transformation of myself from 5 years ago. My hair was a lot darker. Johnny wants me to put shoe polish in my hand now, so the light don't reflect.
The lighting, yeah,
for lighting techniques. But what are you going to do? Stu, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and I thank you so much for being a part of this. It was thoroughly enjoyable, thoroughly entertaining, and very much informative. Very much. You brought a lot.
Me. I enjoy it. It's great.
It's just you always say to yourself, oh, you hope it turns out all right. You just do this. But like I said to you in the tech tune-up, once you start getting in thing and the crowd out here, pumps up with the Q&A, it just brings you down. And I mean, not down in a bad way, but in a good way, where you can share where you can't normally do it on the YouTube channel. So again, thank you so very, very much for being a part of this. I really appreciate you being on and taking the time and the effort.
Thank you.
Out of your busy schedule to be a part of this. So, just so you guys will know, tomorrow, Thursday night, is Johnny's Train Talk Show. That's where Johnny opens up the general store. You guys can wander on in and sit around the potbelly stove, sink a little cider, little root beer, or whatever adult beverage you may have on hand, and talk about trains. And you too can be a part of it, like Mark and I are doing right now. John will put a link up before the show starts, and you can jump in and be a part of it. You have a situation with your train, or you want to talk about something that's going on in your trains, or you just want to share something, by all means, jump in. And we also have the Q&A that can do this. And on Friday, we're gonna premiere after 3 p.m. Youth in the Hobby on the Model Railroading Views program that we've started. That seems to be really swinging right out of the park with that one. So we're really grateful for you guys tuning in and being a part of that, and the way it's been produced by Johnny and the rest of the YouTube Model Builders crew. And we want to thank all the panelists who've been on it. So tomorrow, on Friday, I should say, after 3 p.m., that second series will come out. On the topic will be Youth in the Hobby, and that's our Model Railroading View. And then on Sunday, the 31st of March, we're going to drop the reveal, tell you all about it, let you know what's going on and how it's going on, and the changes that will take place in YouTube Model Builders that we hope that you'll be acceptable to. And again, we want to thank John said that he's retiring. That's not true. He can't retire. But again, Mark, thanks again for being on. I really greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Good.
I enjoyed it.
And we're going to have you on again, definitely, as the structures get bigger and better, and you we'll get you back on, because it was very informative having you on this.
Oh, thank you.
And want to thank John for his directorial ability and his producing and his editing ability. He keeps the show running smoothly. So thank you, John. And again, as I say every time I'm on, thank you guys out there in the community, because without you, we'd just be talking to dead air. So thanks for being a part of this. You guys take care. God bless. And we'll definitely see you on the radio. Bye-bye.